Agathos' vision is to make valuable care obvious and normal. Now, we and I get asked a lot, well, what does that actually mean? Well, let me break it down and talk about both the future as juxtaposed with the present. So, what do we mean by valuable? We mean that every single resource that is dedicated to healthcare is being put to its optimal use. In other words, it's valuable that patients that need care are getting the best version of that care that's unnecessary is expunged, and that in general, we have an economic optimization mindset towards ensuring that population health is optimized and that every patient is served. How do we get there? Well, unfortunately, the current state is that there's a lot of variation in care, and Agathos as a business model has zoomed in on that and tried to reduce that. The way that we do it at present is we give physicians feedback on how their practice compares with their peers. And a lot of that is valuable in and of itself, but it's a bit of a scaffold to get what we really want. An ecosystem of physicians all looking at their practice data at the same time. And by the way, practice data that represents the entirety of physicians' care. Now, this will require a lot of work, a lot of data bridges, a lot of market development, and a lot of experience in the field. But once we get there, we will have the raw ingredients to produce something that has never existed. An exhaustive inventory of physician practice that they have the opportunity to see and respond to first and thus optimize, but that ultimately can be a new basis for the business of medicine. Currently, patients find physicians largely based off online reputational scores, which unfortunately far more reflect the service of medicine than the craft of providing excellent care. Payers use relatively crude data sets and relatively backdated sources to put physicians into tiers and assign them, network inclusion or particular contracts for that, and all of it is usually an altitude above the level of practice. Physicians, for their account, don't get feedback about their practice variation today, in part because there aren't real standards for what practice should be. And there's good reason for that. The data is all over the place, and there's a lot of idiosyncrasies to what the ideal opioid utilization rate should be at hospital A compared to hospital B. All of these are problems that need to be solved before we can get to the point where we can say, Dr. X, this is your practice collectively. It is this degree valuable, and here are the opportunities to make it yet more valuable. And then from that, we can call it an AGA score, that's my working title from it, use the AGA score as a replacement for RVUs for healthcare payments. We can use the AGA score as the primary banner by which physicians advertise their practice for patients. We can use the AGA score as the basis not just for network inclusion, but the ability to have more tailored payment models from payers for effectively the same practice, depending upon whether it is on the valuable side of the spectrum or not. This is what we mean by valuable, and this is Agathos at scale, which is that valuable care is being provided and constantly looked at and iterated upon and found. Well, there's another aspect to the vision that goes yet further, though, than just standardizing care and making sure that indices are widely available that reflect practice, and that is tailoring care. After we have reduced all the unwarranted variation in care, then there's the opportunity to go to the next step, which is to personalize care. Every human being is different, and thus every physician practices differently. There's going to be styles, preferences, philosophies, countenances with patients that they're not right or wrong, they're just different. And there is the opportunity to solve a mapping problem that gets the right patient to the right physician using details that are underneath the aggregate scores, underneath the aggregate patient traffic, underneath the aggregate clinical workflows. And for instance, taking the example of 3 patients that have cancer. One patient has the goal of living as long as they can so they can see their grandkids' graduation. The second one wants to experience as little pain as they can before the end of their life. The third just wants to make sure that they reduce the chance of their family ending up in medical bankruptcy. All real challenges. Great physicians will be differently wired to servicing each of those 3 patients. And if we have an exhaustive panel of their practices, if we have an exhaustive footprint of not just the clinical data, but demographic and socioeconomic data, all in the same place, we can actually match patients to physicians better. This requires a lot of data, a lot of experience in the field, and a lot of iteration with physicians as a user base. But mark our words, we're here for physicians first and foremost as a means to giving better care to patients. That starts in the short term with reducing variation in care. It continues on into ensuring that the business of medicine is on the basis of valuable practice and nothing more, nothing less. And then it ends with having an exhaustive source of truth for how to get the best care to the best patient through the best provider. This does not exist yet today. It can. We have to take disciplined, stepwise approaches to building our database, building our user base, building our community, building our evidence. Real-world evidence can be the basis by which practice is optimized, and with Agathos, one day it will.